Yo guys, it's Mighty, and in this video I want to talk about one of the best balance pads, if not the best balance pads that has ever released that I've ever tried on the market right now. This is the Kurosun Samurai, and it is an extremely balanced and middle speed pad that I've really enjoyed putting my time and aiming on this over the past week and a half to 2 weeks that I've had this, and it's just a really nice pad. Getting into the actual unboxing experience of this mousepad. This mousepad comes flat shipped like all mousepads should, and a double boxed. This is what the front side of the box looks like. On the back you have the Kurosun logo, as well as the tear to actually open it up. And once you do open up the pad, you do see the second box which the pad actually comes in. There's a little tape seal right here and it opens up. The hello card did fall off for me the first time I opened up the box, so yours will be attached up there. Inside is a thank you letter as well as a link to all the Kurosun socials. The mousepad does come in a protective sleeve like this, with an additional plastic protector underneath it to protect the base of the pad and not get destroyed while shipping. Coming over to the mousepad itself, this mousepad is relatively dense. The surface is, I'd say, a little bit softer than an artisan mid, but this mousepad is still pretty firm and you can't really push into it. Very similar to how it was with the Ninja. The size of this pad is 490 by 420 millimeters. And it comes in at about 3.5 millimeters thick. The actual surface of this pad, I'd say, is very lightly textured. It's more of a weavy and kind of soft texturing, nothing hard like a Heian or an Aqua Control Plus. So it's very nice to glide your hand over. I do find that when I'm sweating a lot, especially since it's very hot in California during the summer, my hand does stick to this pad a lot, especially on my wrist, and my palm also does like to stick. So when I am using a mouse, I don't really like the way this pad feels with a sleeve, and my hand just gets absolutely attached to this pad. Coming over to how this pad performs with the sleeve, it performs okay. I wouldn't say it's a very light glide with absolute no resistance, but it doesn't catch on the sleeve like a very textured pad would. So it's an in-between state. I'd say it's usable with a sleeve, but it really depends on which sleeve you get. And using a sleeve on this pad doesn't remove from the experience at all. Stitching on this pad, like every other pad on the market right now, is about the surface level. The stitching is nothing really to go home about. It's basically standard, tight stitching, really high quality, nothing overly amazing like artisan stitching, but it is very usable, and I don't find that my arm catches on the stitching at all, so you don't have to worry about that. The base of this pad is alpha cell. I know a lot of people have their different gripes about alpha cell. Some people don't like it, some people like it. For me, I personally don't care. I find that pads using alpha cell are more firm than pads that don't, and I usually like a firm pad. I really have no issue with this, and I actually enjoy this pad having alpha cell because it basically sticks to your desk and doesn't move at all. And you can basically apply it to your desk like an X-Soft pull-on pad and it just does not move. The Kurosun logo on the bottom right over here is raised above surface level, so you will feel it if you glide your hand or mouse skates over it, but the design is embedded into the surface and there's no inconsistencies when you move your mouse over the design. One thing that you do have to know when you first get this pad out of the box is that there is a noticeable difference between the speed of the X and Y axis. As you do put more time onto this pad, I put probably 20 to 25 hours on this pad alone, if not more. Those inconsistencies start to even out, and it really becomes an even experience without much of a difference between the X and Y. However, I do feel like the Y axis is a little bit slower than the X axis, but that might just be placebo. The weave of this pad makes using dot skates like the J dots an effortless experience without any real tug on the surface of the pad. Makes it really nice. And when I do use full skates, it does create a much nicer and much lighter. It makes it feel like the mouse is floating over the surface. It's a very smooth experience. But it does create a little bit more friction like you would expect. And overall, I just didn't like the way the full-size skates felt on a pad like this. Personally, if I was to recommend skates for this pad, I'd definitely recommend dot skates. If you think that this pad is a little bit too controlled for you, I'd definitely go for the J dots. They make this pad feel really buttery smooth and also pretty fast and not anywhere close to as balanced as it is. And if you do want something a little bit slower, Obsidian dots are also a really good option. Or releasing this Friday, Obsidian air skates are also a great option for that. With my Obsidian air skates, it also makes this pad feel very smooth and very light, but it does add that little bit more control than Jade's normally would. Here's the basic speed test for you guys. And then for the obsidian air. As you can see, there's a little bit more stopping power with the obsidian air. If you guys do want to see a full review of the obsidian air, that review should be dropping this Friday or Saturday, so make sure you get subscribed so you don't miss that video. For the first mousepad I want to compare this against, I want to compare it to the Crucible from Padsmith. The Padsmith does have a pretty even glide experience between the two, and I also feel like the surface texture between these two match up very similar. They both feel very similar in hand, however I do feel like the Padsmith pad does have a little bit less dynamic and static friction over the Samurai, which is even more controlled than the Crucible is. I say the Crucible is on the faster end of balanced pads, and the Samurai just fits right in the middle of it. So if you do have a Crucible or you're trying to figure out if you want either of these pads, just know that the Crucible is a little bit faster than the Samurai is from my testing. The next pad we have here is the MO from Wallhack. The MO does have a much rougher and much tougher texture than the Samurai. It's definitely not as fabricy and as soft as the Samurai is. The MO also feels like it has a little bit more speed and a little bit less dynamic friction while having pretty even static friction across both of these pads. If you want to get something like a Heian with that texture, but you want something a little bit slower, getting the MO is a definitely good option, while the Samurai has a much softer texture and overall does not feel anywhere near as rough as one of those pads. As for my final thoughts on this mousepad, I think this is a really good mousepad if you do want a very balanced experience. It's definitely not too fast, not too slow, and sits right in the middle of that spectrum. Personally, I've never been a fan of anything below the fastest of cloth pads or glass pads, so this pad just really isn't for me. But if I had to pick one balance pad to go to, I would definitely pick this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, peace.